Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Good, okay. Well, thanks for inviting me to be here today. I'm super excited to be able to talk to you guys. Like you said, my name's Dora James, and I work for the Fairness Campaign as the Western Kentucky Regional Organizer. Owensboro has always been a second home to me. I lived here and grew up here until I was about 10 years old. I attended Burns Elementary School. My parents have always worked and done business here. Most recently, they've moved back to Owensboro, so I've kind of have rerouted myself back to the city of Owensboro. The Fairness Campaign is a statewide LGBT rights nonprofit. Now, when I say LGBT, I mean lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. The LGBT community faces many issues today, but I see three main issues: marriage equality, youth rights, and discrimination. Currently, Kentucky is involved in a Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals decision regarding marriage equality. And according to a 2011 National School Climate Survey by GLSEN, Kentucky's secondary public schools are considered unsafe for LGBT youth. Now, these are real civil rights issues, but the last issue I listed, LGBT discrimination, is what I'm here to talk about today. Do me a favor real quick. Raise your hand if you've heard of fairness. Okay, cool. Now keep your hand raised if you think you could explain it to someone. I'm not going to ask you to do that, but if you think you know what fairness is. Okay, well hopefully by the end of this whole thing, everyone will be able to keep their hand raised and say that they know what fairness is. When I say fairness, I refer to the local and statewide movement for LGBT anti-discrimination protections. The Fairness Coalition was created as the advocacy group for fairness protections and consists of 4 different organizations: the American Civil Liberties Union of Kentucky, Fairness Campaign, Lexington Fairness, and the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. The first 3 organizations are nonprofits, and the latter is a state government agency that enforces our state Civil Rights Act. In Owensboro and the majority of Kentucky, it's currently legal to fire someone from their job, deny them housing, or kick them out of a restaurant or park for their actual or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity. That's right, it's 2014, and it's legal to discriminate against someone for being gay. Contrary to popular assumption, there are no federal or state enumerated laws that protect against this. There are 7 different Kentucky cities that have passed their own fairness ordinances: Covington, Louisville, Lexington, Vicco, Frankfort, Moorhead, and Danville. These 7 cities make a little over 25% of the state that lives with LGBT fairness protections. There are coalition groups all over the state and various cities advocating for their own local fairness protections. Owensboro Fairness is our local movement. What did I do? Well, okay. I'd like to take you through a quick timeline of our fairness movement. Cool, thank you. The fairness movement gained its momentum in 2012. At this time, there were only 3 Kentucky cities with fairness protections. Louisville and Lexington were the first 2 in 1999, and then Covington passed its own fairness ordinance in 2003. During the fall of 2012, about a half-dozen Kentucky cities had fairness members and supporters show up in masses to their locally elected in our blue, there you go, thank you, in our blue fairness shirts asking for LGBT fairness protections in their own cities. 2013 was the year that fairness really took off. That January, a tiny eastern Appalachian town of about 300 people, Vicco, Kentucky, passed its own fairness ordinance. This made them literally the smallest town in America with fairness protections. This headline made national news, including a segment on the Colbert Report. So, fun story about Vicco, Kentucky. That little cartoon right there, I think that's really cool. That's supposed to be like Andy Griffin talking to his son about Vicco, Kentucky. And this was a headline. They have a population of 334 people. They have a city commission of 4 members. My boss was there when they passed fairness. They have, it's like a pool hall that they meet at with foldable tables. They smoke during the city commission meeting. I mean, these are people that you would not assume to be open to LGBT rights, but they passed it no question. My boss said that when he went down there, one of the city commissioners came late. He had like a grease-stained white t-shirt and a baseball cap, and he's like, all right, well, I haven't had time to read over this. But this is basically saying, like, you know, Betty, the black lady that lives up on 11th Street. We can't fire her from her job for being black. So this is the same thing. We couldn't fire the lesbian couple from their job for being gay, right? And my boss was just like, yeah, that's essentially what this would do. And he's like, well, okay, no problem, let's do this. And then it passed 3-1, no problem. And then, like I said, they made the Colbert Report. I didn't put the clip on here because it's kind of lengthy, but that national news segment took off the movement in fairness in Kentucky. So by August, the city of Frankfort also passed a fairness ordinance, and 2013 ended on a positive note with the city of Moorhead also passing fairness in December, and Owensboro Fairness being founded. So we went from having 3 cities with a fairness ordinance in 2003 to 10 years later doubling our numbers from 6 to 3, which was awesome. During the 2014 Kentucky General Assembly, the statewide LGBT fairness law was filed for its 15th year with a record number of 18 co-sponsors. This was House Bill 171. This is basically a statewide version of the local fairness law that we're working on. We also had a duplicate Senate bill with a record number of co-sponsors. It was Senate Bill 140, and it also had Senate Minority Whip Jerry Rhodes, who represents very conservative areas like Ohio County, which I'm from, who signed on and sponsored the bill, which was huge. In February, hundreds of Kentuckians from all over the state gathered at our state capitol, including people from Owensboro, to lobby and rally in support of the statewide fairness law. This year's rally had a record number of co-sponsors, a record number of attendees, and co-sponsors too. We had over 600 people at the state capitol that day. Members of one of our Owensboro fairness groups brought the Unitarian Universalist Standing on the Side of Love banner, which I have that picture in a minute. This is some more pictures from the lobby day. You had people all over the Capitol Rotunda building. There's also balconies that were full. People chanting, "What do we want? Fairness. When do we want it now?" It was really good. So yeah, and the Unitarian Universalist Association Standing on the Side of Love banner made it into the Fairness Campaign annual newsletter, which I think is a great example of what we can do when we all come together as allies. You had faith leaders from all over the state standing behind that banner. There it is. In March 5th, 2014 was the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights March in Frankfort led by Dr. Martin Luther King. It was only a day before this day that we got confirmation for the first ever informational hearing on the statewide fairness law that would take place after the march. So we didn't really have a lot of notice to get a lot of people together. So on this historic day, in commemoration of another historic day, thousands of Kentuckians, including Owensboro people, marched together to the steps of the state capitol reenacting the original march. Now after that march, fairness supporters left the rally outside of the Capitol building to sit in for the first ever hearing on fairness. This was just an informational hearing, but this was still huge. The room was full of people in blue fairness shirts, sitting and standing. There was even an extra room for overflow. This was taken from inside the hearing. The mayor of Covington spoke in support of fairness, a business supporter from the Brown-Forman Corporation, a Catholic priest, and a former police sergeant who was fired from his job for being gay, all gave testimony in support of the statewide fairness law. After the testimony, there was no vocal opposition. In fact, Representative John Tilley, who was the chair of the Judiciary Committee that the bill was assigned to, commented that he hoped to see us again. I remember sitting in that room and watching the hearing and feeling an overwhelming sense of gratification. For over 15 years, the same bill had been filed, sponsored, but never given a hearing, so it essentially died on the floor. But this was the year for change. This was the year that changed the issue of fairness from an if to a when. Locally, the beginning of 2013 marked Owensboro Fairness becoming a real movement. After we began meeting monthly, a fairness member had an informal conversation with Commissioner Pam Smith-Wright about fairness, bringing this issue to her attention. Now this is a perfect illustration of the positive impact that one person can have. This May was when we began our formal communication with the Owensboro City Commission about fairness. We met with Commissioner Bob Glenn about fairness, who is supportive. The next day we had our regular monthly meeting where we wrote over 65 handwritten letters in support of fairness and sent them to the entire City Commission. Weeks later, everyone was pleasantly surprised. There's my little sister writing a letter to the City Commission. Everyone was pleasantly surprised to receive a handwritten letter back from Commissioner Pam Smith-Wright saying that Owensboro was working on a fairness ordinance. I'm pretty sure she wrote the same thing in every letter. This one says, "Thank you for your letter. As you read this, we are working on an LGBT fairness ordinance. Thank you for your letter again. Sincerely, Commissioner Pam Smith-Wright." The month of June saw two significant events on the timeline of fairness. On June 9th, the city of Danville became the 7th Kentucky city with fairness protections. Later that month, Owensboro celebrated its annual LGBT Pride picnic with Commissioner Smith-Wright as a guest speaker. She spoke in support of LGBT rights and announced that Owensboro was working on a fairness ordinance. Understandably, we were all super excited about this potential. That is the building that we had the Pride picnic in. There's a picture of me and a fairness member tabling, and that lower picture is Pam Smith-Wright when she was giving her speech to the group. During the month of July, we received word that Mayor Payne and Commissioner Glenn asked the Owensboro Human Relations Commission to research and present fairness to the City Commission. Being as fairness is simply an amendment to our existing City Civil Rights Act, this made perfect sense, because Owensboro HRC is the entity that would essentially be the teeth in the local fairness ordinance. If we had a fairness ordinance, if someone was discriminated against in Owensboro on the basis of their sexual orientation or their gender identity, they could call Owensboro HRC and file a complaint and start the investigation process. Owensboro HRC Executive Director Sylvia Coleman presented fairness at the beginning of a regular City Commission meeting in August. Like the statewide fairness hearing, there was no vocal opposition. And like the statewide hearing, we had visible support in the form of a group of blue fairness supporters wearing our blue fairness shirts. These were not blue people. That's a group of us outside of City Hall. About a week after the commission meeting, we had a formal meeting with Commissioner Jeff Sanford. Between that initial presentation and our meeting with Commissioner Sanford, Owensboro City Commission had received a lot of negative, conservative, religiously based backlash. There had also been a lot of negative readers' right articles published in the Messenger Inquirer. Commissioner Sanford did not give us his support at that meeting. A few days before the City Commission meeting, we received word that the first reading of the ordinance would not happen as planned because they were still working on the language of the ordinance. But we attended the City Commission meeting anyways because we believe it's important to have an ongoing presence at the City Commission meetings. We were shocked when Mayor Payne made an announcement that the City Commission, that they were going to table fairness for a year and come back to it. That's members, some of you are here today, inside the City Commission meeting. And also, before we go to City Commission meetings, we usually meet somewhere downtown, like maybe outside of Gambrinus or Bebop's, and then we walk down to City Hall together and sit together. So, whenever they announced that they were going to table fairness and come back to it, they said that they were going to give the community time to cool off. This news was picked up by the Associated Press, making its way all the way to San Francisco and even in the Washington Post. While this is a big disappointment, we are not giving up. We've continued to attend the City Commission meetings, and we believe that tabling this for a year could very well just mean till after the election. When Mayor Payne explained his reasoning for postponing fairness, he said that we needed community education on the topic of we needed community education on this topic in the form of a public forum. At the last commission meeting, we asked him for a forum, which he promised would happen soon. So this is where you all can help. The next City Commission meeting will be Tuesday, October 21st at 5 p.m. in City Hall. We plan to have a presence of Owensboro Fairness members and supporters attend this meeting and ask for an update on the forum. Besides this, you can all help by writing letters or emails to the City Commission and the Mayor in support of fairness, or a positive Reader's Right article. We still have two supportive commissioners on the City Commission right now who will hopefully be re-elected. Outside of Owensboro, the City of Berea is about to vote on their own fairness ordinance on October 7th. Statewide, we're on the verge of a Senate interim hearing on fairness. Despite being temporarily stifled, Owensboro Fairness has a strong movement. We have over 20 locally owned businesses that have signed on as business supporters of fairness. Being as fairness laws deal with employment and public accommodations, it's important to show support and that fairness is good for business. I'll read this list off in case people can't read it. Heath and Molly, Tropic Vapor, Carlia's Food and Spirits, Yummy Buffet, Simply Chic Home Accents, Studio 105 Art and Frame, Gambrinus Libation Emporium, known as Downtown Market, Bella Regaza Boutique, Andrea's Candies, number 11 got cut off.
Bebops.
Bebops, yeah, I have it here. Thank you. Famous Bistro, M&M Jewelers, Lady Luck Tattoo and Body Piercing, Bill's Restaurant, Mirko Pasta, Paula Hayden Agency, Plumber and Plumber LLC, Hippie Hill Hemp Soaps. The last two are my parents' businesses, but you have to start where you're at, right? Eastside Family Care, Owensboro Music Center, and Beloved Viking Vinyl. If we could get a crowd this size at the next City Commission meeting in our blue fairness shirts to show visible support, think of the positive impact that we could all make. So let's recap. Owensboro Fairness has been around since 2013 as a part of a joint local and statewide movement. In 2013, after a 10-year break since the last passing of fairness, we doubled the number of cities with local fairness protections. Adding the city of Danville passing this year, there are now 7 Kentucky cities with a local fairness ordinance. The 2014 Kentucky General Assembly saw a historic and record number of co-sponsored for the statewide fairness law and the first ever hearing on fairness after 15 years of advocating for this law and waiting for this moment to happen. On the local level, Owensboro Fairness has over 20 businesses that support a campaign that started just a year ago, or less than a year ago. Our first supporter signed on at the end of January. We've written letters to the City Commission. We've taken part in a community sidewalk chalk art contest. We've written numerous readers' rights articles, and we've even had a local musician refuse to play any more shows here in Owensboro until fairness passes. People are paying attention to what's going on here. As I said before, the issue of fairness has shifted from being an if to being a when. I've only been employed with fairness since November, but even still I've seen such momentum and so many victories. If you're interested in Owensboro Fairness, I'd encourage you to like our Facebook page. If you are on Facebook, you can just search Owensboro Fairness. It'll be the only page that'll come up with that name. I'd also encourage you to join our emailing list. You can join the emailing list a couple ways. My sister has a clipboard. Can you hold the clipboard up? This is just like a generic sign-in sheet that we have at all of the Owensboro Fairness meetings. You can write your name, number, and email. Also, I'd encourage everyone to sign one of these. My sister also has a stack of them with pens. These are our statewide fairness petitions. These go to 4 different Kentucky legislators. So whenever people sign these, I don't ask you to fill out your information 4 times. If you'll just fill out your information on one card, sign all of them and hand it back in one piece, we'll send it off for you and we'll have an intern fill out the rest of the information for you. And if you'll legibly put your email address on this, that's how I'll get your email as well. Email and Facebook are the 2 ways that we do most of our communication about what's going on with Owensboro Fairness. Once you start getting my emails, you might notice, if you read my emails, I hope you do, at the signature line in my emails I have a Harvey Milk quote. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. These words drive a lot of what I do in my advocacy work. If you believe in something, for example, the basic principle that we all deserve human rights, like LGBT fairness protections, then don't wait for someone else to make this happen. Do something about it. We all have our own unique human potential, and let's remember the fact that this whole movement was started by a this whole movement was started and introduced to the City Commission through one informal conversation between a city commissioner and one individual. I'll stop talking soon, but I'd be a horrible organizer if I didn't leave you with like some kind of call to action. Like I said, if you believe in something, don't wait for someone else to make things better. Be proactive and take action. Acknowledge the fact that you can make a strong positive impact and that we can make a strong positive impact in this generation's civil rights movement. Whatever feels right to you, as long as you do something about it. Because being silent would be a serious underestimation of what you can achieve. Owensboro Fairness meets monthly. We've been meeting the 4th Wednesday of every month at 6 p.m., plus we have regular attendance at the City Commission meetings. It's recently been brought to my attention that the original meeting location at the other Unitarian Universalist Church does not work for the members of this congregation. I was not aware of this until about a month ago. I didn't even know that you guys existed until about a month ago, so it's nice to meet you all. I'm working on securing a meeting location at Owensboro Community College. That's still being finalized, but I'm like 99% sure we're going to get in there before the next meeting, so our October meeting should be there. I'm very excited about the potential of having members of this congregation as well as students from OCTC involved. I found out through communication with them that they have a student like Queer Alliance and LGBT group that are super excited to get involved with Owensboro Fairness. So our numbers could definitely grow very soon. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, October 22nd at 6 p.m. and this is the day after the next City Commission meeting. And I look forward to being able to announce a new neutral meeting location before that meeting starts. So I'm for real gonna stop talking, but thank you so much for asking me to speak today and for being such a great ally to the movement on fairness. I can't wait for the day that I can give one of these talks and I get to list Owensboro as a city with fairness protections. And I'm confident that that day will happen, but until it happens, I look forward to working with all of you. Couple other things. I have some Free Fairness Coalition or Free Fairness Campaign bumper stickers. My sister has those as well. And like I said, we have a business supporter list. Well, another thing that we're looking to do to show support in the community, because we found kind of a three-pronged approach to work well with fairness. You show community support, people like you, business support, which is this list right here, and then also support in the faith community, because a lot of the backlash that we've gotten has been faith-based backlash. We've recently printed off these stickers. They say People of Faith Fairness Coalition. These could be hung on as a window cling outside of the building. I don't know if I think you guys share this building with someone else maybe, but these could also be bumper stickers or on your own window or door of your house. And we're wanting to start a list of people of faith that support fairness, much like the business list. So if that's something that you guys as a congregation would be interested in doing, I'd love to work with you all on that. So thank you so much. Yes?
The business list, is it on your website or do you have a printout of those?
Yeah, it's on the website. Well, so Owensboro Fairness doesn't technically have a website, we just have a Facebook page.
Okay.
And I regularly update that list and I put it on Facebook, as well as I send it off as an email attachment on the emailing list about once a month. So if you guys are on Facebook or on the emailing list, you'll get updates about this.
David?
Would you comment on, there's a federal law, and you see it in print a lot, that they do not discriminate because of age and race and so forth, and sex is one of those.
Right.
Now what's, that doesn't cover what you're wanting to do?
No. Sex is a different category. The categories that we want to amend and add to this law would be, well, that's the federal law, like you said, but most states and cities have laws similar to that. We want to add the protected classes of sexual orientation and gender identity. Gender identity pertains to people who are transgender and are transitioning from one gender to another. And sexual orientation would be people who identify as lesbian, gay, or bisexual.
So the federal law is just male, female?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very binary.
You know, I was in Henderson this week, and their city council met, and they brought up the issue of fairness, and one of the things that many of the people, no, one person particularly said, well, there's a federal law.
Exactly, yeah.
And that has also been said at our meetings here at City Hall. So David, I'm glad you brought that up, so maybe somebody can say or rebuttal the statement that that only pertains to male and female.
Yeah, there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to fairness. I mean, if you guys pay attention to the Reader's Rights section in the Messenger Inquirer, you can see a lot of them there. I read a Messenger Inquirer article that said that if we passed a fairness ordinance in Bowling Green, that soon bestiality and incense would be legal. Obviously that's not true, and that's an extreme example of a misconception. But we're hoping that through a public forum that the City of Owensboro will set up, that we can communicate and educate the community about this issue. Because I think a lot of the backlash that we're getting are people who genuinely do not understand what a fairness law would do.
Well, that about the bestiality and the incest,
Exactly.
that's just so fear-driven.
It's fear-mongering, yeah.
It's like, what are people afraid of? Get down to it. You're afraid of something, or you're not trying to squash somebody else's rights.
Yeah, and as I think in my introduction, you guys were told I studied pre-law in college. I mean, I studied logic. That's totally a logical fallacy. It's called slippery slope, where you, and that's a perfect example. If we pass a fairness law, incest and bestiality will follow. I mean, that's completely illogical. That's not going to happen. But that is a logical fallacy, and that's where a lot of these arguments happen. And I have absolutely no problem, and I've done it before, meeting with city commissioners, printing off these articles of the Messenger Inquirer readers' rights and like logically deconstructing them in front of them. And I hope that helps, but you know, you can only do so much. Any other questions?
Dean?
Yes.
More questions.
Okay.
I have a couple of, I have a little
A
story.
little louder.
Okay, I have a little story. I have lived in Ohio County for about 15 years.
Yeah.
I come from Northwest Indiana. Huh?
The same
Anyway,
as my family.
I come from Northwest Indiana, part of Chicagoland.
Mhm.
Chicago, much maligned city, but a wonderful city. And this is settled up there. The mainstream up there would be appalled at the attitude that is being fought down here by
Yeah,
you guys.
exactly.
All right. So I come down, turns out, I'm not going to mention this guy's name, but in Ohio, the much maligned Ohio County, for many, many years, the sheriff, just like
I know who you're
Vico,
talking about.
was widely known to be what we used to say, the alternative lifestyle in my
Yeah.
corporate days. And he was reelected and reelected and reelected
Yeah,
until he got in some trouble of another sort.
yeah,
You know what I'm talking
I
about.
do, yeah.
So that's kind of a positive thing
Yeah.
down here.
Yes.
And it shows that not, that people can be swayed and kind, and it kind of depends maybe on the individual or something like that.
Yeah,
But it's amazing to me this is still going on in this.
yeah, I totally agree. Whenever, and I have lots of conversations with people about fairness, anywhere from like just normal everyday people to like state representatives, and a lot of people are genuinely surprised that this is even an issue in 2014. I mean, it seems archaic and ridiculous. And most people do focus on marriage equality as an LGBT issue, and I mean, I totally support marriage equality, obviously. And I do believe that after we get through this stupid appeals process that Governor Steve Beshear insisted upon us doing, that we will have same-gender weddings in Kentucky very soon. But without a fairness law, we have the potential to have like a kind of like semi-Jim Crow kind of thing, where same-gender couples can legally be married, but they can also legally be discriminated against. So whenever you guys have conversations about marriage equality, and that's the issue that most people relate to LGBT issues, I would encourage you to turn the conversation to fairness and say, well, we might have a marriage equality law, but someone could still be fired from their job for being gay in Owensboro. So, something to think about. There are currently 29 states in the United States that do not have LGBT anti-discrimination protections. I will say that Kentucky is very close to being one of the first southern states to pass a statewide fairness law. Our movement is really taking off here. There are a lot of national equality groups that are paying attention to us and looking at what we're doing, because the people here are awesome.
If the state passes it, then what happens to the different cities?
Well, then that would be a statewide law, so it would carry on to the cities as well. And that could very well happen before all of these cities pass their own local fairness law. But until that happens, that's why we're working on city movements. Because, for example, city commission elections are often decided by maybe less than 100 votes. So the real power is here with you guys. I mean, we can make this movement happen here and protect the LGBT community here in Owensboro until the statewide fairness law passes. Things on the state level move a lot slower typically. I mean, we've been working on the statewide fairness bill for 15 years. We've been working in Owensboro for less than a year. The city of Berea has been working on their movement for 3 years, and they're about to pass. So it is a joint movement, and one day I really do hope that we have a statewide fairness law, and then we don't have to worry about having fairness coalition groups in the cities because everyone's protected. But until that happens, that's why we have these city movements as well. And then also, certain cities like Frankfurt, for example, they passed a fairness ordinance in 2013. They still meet and they work on countywide protections as well as statewide protections too. Any other questions? Yes.
Dora, as someone who did a lot of business outreach
Yeah.
and acquired a lot of these, supporters. I'm wondering, since all of the backlash happened, and you said that this list is on the Facebook page.
Mhm.
Have we heard from any of the supporters, the business supporters, about anything they have heard as far as backlash, or
No.
any of their customers who said, well, now that I know that you're a supporter, I'm not going to.
I haven't heard about that. So, I mean, there's potential that that's happened, but I think since we haven't been told that it hasn't. And I mean, from my perspective, we've had like two or three of the last supporters that signed on, like Beloved Viking Vinyl, contacted us because they heard about everything that was going on, and they said they wanted to sign on and support. And then also I mentioned the local musician who stopped playing shows in Owensboro. He did that because of all the backlash. So if anything else, I think we're just receiving a lot of support from people who want to help us. Any other questions?
Do you know if we were in Missouri and St. Louis recently, and I was just amazed because their tour guide, they're a very vibrant city, and they had a whole page advertising they have a special community that has a lot of gay LGBTQ people living in it. It's a special, I forgot what they call it, Grove City or something like that. But there was a big page, and they were so proud of being so welcoming to the LGBT community. And I thought, that is something that we could, bring up to our local officials and let them know that we want to be, we want to be like St. Louis.
Definitely. A lot of cities own their LGBT pride. Like Lexington, for example, I forgot what survey it was or what list, but they've been named one of the most LGBT-friendly cities in the country, which is awesome. And also, we've been doing some research on LGBT tourism. The LGBT community is the third largest buying power in America. That's because more often than not, they have two disposable incomes. And also, gay men in particular often belong to like frequent mile clubs, and they do a lot of traveling. In fact, their travel doubled during the recession. So that's definitely something that we want to bring up to the City Commission. That's why we say fairness is good for business, because you have this group that are the third largest buying power. They're doing a lot of travel, and they're paying attention to what cities that they're open and welcoming in. So that's why you'll have LGBT people who will go to Louisville and Lexington as opposed to Owensboro. Owensboro is an up-and-coming city, and I think, being as downtown revenue and business is such a priority for the city of Owensboro, that fairness just kind of goes hand in hand with that. And further, I think that the hostility that's been shown at the City Commission meetings, in the Reader's Right articles, the phone calls that the City Commission has gotten, just illustrates the need for fairness, that discrimination is a problem here. And on that note, I know more often than not people ask for stories of discrimination, is discrimination a problem in Owensboro? The answer is yes, but you have to think that because there is no fairness protections here, there's no legal system to take in these complaints. So if an LGBT person they could call the Owensboro Human Relations Commission and they could listen to them, but they can't do anything about it. So more often than not, they're not going to waste their time making that phone call. And then also, I won't get into people's personal details, but I have heard of stories of discrimination in Owensboro, and it's all been employment discrimination. And when we talk about fairness laws, the group of people that I think of that need these protections are the lower income LGBT individuals who are the most vulnerable. They're not your well-to-do doctors who everyone knows are gay and they appreciate them and they're a part of the community and they have power like that. These are your lower income individuals who work at the McDonald's or the Pizza Hut, jobs where they could fire them one day and have somebody in that same position the next day. And so when a person is discriminated against and fired from their job for being LGBT in Owensboro, which has happened and does happen, if they're at a lower income job like that, if I were in their shoes, the first thing I would do would be to try to find another job, because most people live paycheck to paycheck. And then once you get that other job, you'd probably do whatever you could to protect yourself from being re-victimized like that. So you don't want to out yourself to the City Commission and say, hey everyone, look what happened to me and could happen again at this other job, if that makes sense. So that's why we don't have a lot of stories of discrimination that come up like that. The police sergeant that I mentioned who was fired from his job for being gay in Louisville, he kind of became like the poster child for the fairness movement this year, and I don't know if he intended for that to happen, but that's definitely what happened. But he is another person that was in a position of power. He lived in Louisville, so they did have a fairness law. He did go through the process of the investigation. They settled out of court, but he was not your, your typical lower income individual. He, one of the quotes in the testimony that he gave was, "I'm a Republican, a gun owner, a Christian, a cop, and I'm gay." And he looks like a real big burly man that you wouldn't want to meet in an alley and try to challenge him. So that's why I think he was more comfortable coming out and talking about what happened to him as opposed to people in this community, if that makes sense. Yes?
This is a different kind of question. This discrimination, what is the root of that? Is it purely religion? What does it go back to?
Oh man, I wish I could answer that, but I'm kind of glad that I can't because I don't have that frame of mind. Like I don't discriminate against people. Yes?
I think I can help
Okay.
with that because I think what it is they are saying that this is an issue of freedom, their own freedom to conduct their business as they like. If it's their business and they want to fire someone, then they should be able to do it.
But that's their defense. I'm talking about why did they feel that way to start with?
I think it's,
because they believe, they're religious fundamentalists who believe that it's an abomination and that,
So it does pretty much go back to religion.
oh, absolutely.
Well, I know in the military,
Absolutely.
I've known other people that would just sort of look forward to beating up a gay, for example. No reason. They just find one and beat him up, Where does that kind of thing come from?
Religion.
Well, I will say that,
That was a societal culture.
Fear you're not like me.
yeah, exactly. I've studied history in college, and a theme that I found more often than not is that people fear what they do not understand, and they mask that fear with anger and hate. It's like a defense mechanism. And often that's rooted in insecurity of that individual who is doing the discrimination. So I think it all boils down to the person. And I think that there is just a lot of misconceptions about the LGBT community and fairness in general. But I do think that when people do not understand something like homosexuality or being gay, they're afraid of it because they don't understand it. That's something that all humans have, right? We want to understand everything and place a label on everything and understand what's going on. And when we don't, we become frustrated by that and we become afraid of it. But fear is a more insecure emotion to show than anger. Anger shows that you're strong somehow. So I think that that's what a lot of this discrimination comes from.
In the ancient world, there was a lot of discrimination long before
Right.
before there was Christian or any kind of, but I think maybe all religions throughout. Not sure of that.
Yeah.
But there's a natural tendency somewhere.
It is. It's a very human nature type
It
thing.
has a human nature aspect.
I want to think of this
Exacerbate.
manhood or something. We've actually, a member of our group has had that happen to them years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
What gets me is when I was 14, I was depressed for 2 weeks and didn't want to get out of bed because the school was telling me I had to decide all these classes that I needed to take in high school because I needed to know then what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Exactly, right?
When I was 18, I was allowed to sign a legal document that bound me to a car payment, and there were legal repercussions if I defaulted on it and everything else. Marriage at its foundation is a legal contract. Now I know there's more involved
Yeah.
than that. But I'm almost 50 now, but I can't decide who I want to spend my life with. But when I was 18, you could hold me responsible for all this big money that I owed. When I was 14, the government wanted me to know what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And at that time, you couldn't vote, but you could go fight for your country.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, these are things that we see all throughout history, right? Women's suffrage, the civil rights movement for, racial protections. Like, I mean, if you look at some of the arguments that people had during the civil rights movement of the 60s, they are almost duplicate arguments of what people are using now against why we need fairness protections.
Sure.
History definitely repeats itself, but on that note, all those other civil rights movements have been successful, so that's why I stand firm in that the civil rights movement will be successful as well. Yes?
Would you say this is a true statement that most of the discrimination like we're talking about comes from men?
I don't know, because I've definitely seen women who are discriminatory as well. For example, business outreach. So I work with the Bowling Green Fairness Coalition group as well, and we do like action meetings where we'll go out in the community and we'll go to different locally owned businesses and ask them to sign on. And I've definitely met a female shop owner who, as soon as I started, you know, I said we're in support of an anti-discrimination law, which, like, who's going to disagree with that, right? Your mother. Oh well. Well. So whenever I presented it to her as that, she was in support of it. And then when I started explaining to her that it was discrimination based on someone's sexual orientation or gender identity, I could just see her face that it was like she was just shut off, you know. And that was a woman, and I mean, and I've seen it happen in men too. I think that men might be a little bit more like blunt about it maybe, but I think all people are equally capable of discrimination.
I think men are more active at it, or let it show. Or
Actively, yeah, that's a good word, yeah.
At the last city commission meeting that we attended, there was a woman got up,
Yeah,
remember her?
yeah.
And she was saying, well, what am I going to tell my granddaughter or grandchild or whatever down at Smothers Park if there are gay people around? Well,
And she also said if my granddaughter is pointing at gay people.
right, yeah.
Like, we'll tell her not to point at people, you know?
Just like you would tell somebody, a child, not to point at somebody who is a special needs person, somebody that's in a
Exactly.
wheelchair or looks different than
Exactly,
they do.
and I'm
It's the
glad you
same
made
thing.
that point, because the city Civil Rights Act that we're trying to amend with fairness protections has protections based on disability. This is the same thing. It's just adding 2 other protected classes. And it's not like we're trying to create a whole new system. Owensboro HRC is actively at work. They work in City Hall, and they fully endorse this. They have our back, but the City Commission are the ones who could vote this in. So ultimately, it's their decision. Yes?
That is part of the ordinance, right? If it passes, every homosexual person will have to wear a big shirt that says gay person on it. And they'll all
Exactly.
be making out in public at the children in the
Yeah.
children's play area.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't
That's
wait.
exactly right. I'm glad that we're all on the same page and we all understand.
I mean, you guys, you're kidding, aren't you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past, you know. I wouldn't
There
put it
is,
past.
There is some organized opposition, and I don't say this to alert anyone because I think it's funny, if anything. So, you know, we have an Owensboro Fairness Facebook page. Well, there is a Facebook page that's called Vote No to FO, and and if you're on Facebook, go look it up and do some light reading. But they have maybe like 20-something people who like the page, and it's just all like religiously backed opposition to fairness ordinances, but it's all like slippery slope kind of things, and I mean, it's not super well organized. I just say that because I think it's funny. I don't know, I have to laugh sometimes. The city of Berea, they also, you know, like I said, they're going to vote on fairness on October 7th. They have had people, so we have our blue fairness shirts, which, by the way, if you guys want one, I have a box of free fairness shirts if you guys want to start coming to city commission meetings, because we all wear those. So please see the box before this is all over, and I'll try to get you the correct size. If I don't have your size here today, and if you do go to an Owensboro Fairness event, just remind me and I'll have that size for you next time. But so let's have, so these shirts, right? Another Kentuckian for fairness. Like, I wear that all the time for fairness events, and then I also have no problem going to the grocery store rocking my fairness shirt. A lot of times people will like say, hey, I really like your shirt, or, you know, give me a thumbs up or something. One time I got free food for it, so that was cool. But the city of Berea, they have some organized opposition, and they have red shirts that say, just say no to fairness. Right? So, like, let's think about that for a minute. I mean, even if you don't understand what the movement for fairness is, like the word fairness, like, What could
In
you
general,
like? Would
just-
you be okay going to the grocery store wearing a shirt that says "Just Say No to Fairness"? Like, do you think people would think you would be a cool person? I don't think so. So you know, that's you know, kind of a bum factor that they did that. But I mean, I think that Berea will pass fairness. They've had a really strong movement, and it's been a lot of student involvement as well. So that's why I'm really focused on trying to get us moved to the community college so we can get some student involvement as well.
Yes.
They've been a big help in all the other coalition movements. Yes.
I don't know if you mentioned, Nora, but when I joined the group, I wasn't aware of the dates, the meeting dates for the city commission.
Yeah.
And so they're on the 1st and 3rd
Yeah.
Tuesdays of every month.
Yeah.
And that's why I showed up on September 30th and was the only person there.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't really realized that is the schedule for the
Yeah.
city commission meetings, 1st and 3rd Tuesday. And then they have a work session too. I believe it's open to the public.
Yeah, it is open to the public.
I think it is as far as the.
I don't know what
was
date it is. I
told.
have it in email, but I can't remember. But it is a work session. I think they're inviting all the city commission candidates to it because there's some kind of like city commission candidate. I don't know if it's a forum or a works. Well, that moves. But so that would be an opportunity for us to go and ask the city commission candidates where they stand on fairness. You know, definitely I think everyone should have the right to vote and vote for who they want to, but I would encourage you when you make these decisions to think about what commissioners support fairness. Because we want to have a city commission that is firm in fairness. And I will say I do think that Mayor Payne does support this. He did originally. I mean, he's the one who brought this to Owensboro Human Relations Commission and said, you know, this is your job to present this to us. They kind of had a system in place and a plan. They wanted Owensboro HRC to present this formally at a commission meeting. The next commission meeting had the first reading. The next one had the second reading, and it passed. But I don't think that they were expecting such backlash. And so Mayor Payne does support this, I think. He has not came out and said that. But I don't think that he would do what he has been doing if he had not. He would not have made this an issue. And the same with, like I didn't mention Mayor Pro Tem Nunley. We haven't had a meeting with her, but at the commission meeting where they had that presentation, they had time for all commissioners to make comment. Commissioner Sanford is very supportive, as is Commissioner Smith-Wright. Commissioner Sanford's, or not Commissioner, oh man, Commissioner Glenn. Commissioner Glenn, not Commissioner Sanford. I get my names mixed up. Bob Glenn is supportive. He's been a very big help. So has Commissioner Smith-Wright. Commissioner Jeff Sanford has not came out in support. Fun fact about him. So we have it's called the Family Foundation, and they're kind of like Kentucky's anti-marriage equality group. And there's also the Commonwealth Center, Commonwealth Policy Center. These are two nonprofit organizations that focus on anti-marriage equality stuff. There's a man named Richard Nelson who works for the Commonwealth Center Policy, and he also worked as a policy analyst for the Family Foundation. And he came down to the City Commission meeting that was supposed to be the first reading and gave a speech about how fairness is going to lead to bestiality and incest and all this crap. And he also came and started talking to Commissioner Sanford. Now I'm telling you this just because, I mean, this is something that anyone could observe. Like, this happened. So I don't think that we have Sanford's support. Mayor Pro Tem Nunley, though, however, at the end of that first meeting where they had the presentation, she said that she supported it. So I think that if we can have a public forum and if we can kind of quell the backlash, that we might be able to move forward on this. Yes?
The fear of the people on the city council is they don't want what happened in Henderson to happen here. In Henderson, the council passed the fairness, and the right, or whoever you want to say, they said, we'll vote you out. Well, they voted out the council people and then rescinded the fairness ordinance.
Yeah.
So I believe that's one reason that they're kind of putting the brake on until after the election.
Yeah.
So if you can show up in support, silent support is support. Okay? I mean, they need to know.
Yeah, they need to know. You're exactly right. I will say that I'm not sure exactly when Henderson happened. I think it was in the 90s. And since then, there has been a precedent in Kentucky, I'm not sure in which court, saying that cities have the right to have fairness ordinances. And that's why I do think that they want to wait till after the election to make this happen so that they can avoid that. And I also think that Mayor Payne tabled fairness so that he can have, you know, the current commission will not become unpopular and he can have them in again. Because I've also noticed going to city commission meetings that the majority of laws that have been passed by a unanimous vote. And that's because they all like to be on the same page, and Mayor Payne likes everyone to agree with him. So I think that that's kind of his way of thinking. If I can hold this off till after the election, we can get this current commission in, then we can continue to do things as we've been doing.
So he can bring it up any time, he doesn't have to wait.
Yeah,
a
he
year.
can. No, he can bring it up at the next city commission meeting, but it's all, you know, his call. And like she said, I do think, you know, combing and showing visible support is a great way to let them know that you agree about that. And when I say visible support, I encourage you all to wear a fairness shirt, just because they all know that people who wear the shirt support fairness, and then when they look out into the crowd and they see a group of 20 people in blue shirts all sitting together, they know that these 20 people support and want fairness protections. Yeah. Anything else? No? Okay. Well, would it be an appropriate time to pass these
Yeah,
out?
sure.
Okay. Can you help, little sister? And there's pins as well. That's just one. Gina has, my little sister has pins and the statewide fairness petitions. If you do not want to sign one of those, there's also a clipboard where you can just sign your email and name. I'd encourage all of you, if you want to get involved in fairness, to